Welcome to Can't Stop the Pop, the podcast where we, that's me, Craig,
and me, Matty,
do a deep dive on a song from the 90s and noughties. It's season 2.
It is indeed season 2. This is very exciting.
This is so exciting. This is about 11 episodes more than I ever thought we'd do.
I mean, we had such a great time recording season 1, and although it feels like a long time since we've started the first season, I don't feel like we've stopped, if that makes sense, because we've been trying so much to be really active on social media and plan season 2 and put a couple of exciting things in place.
Yeah, we've made some fundamental improvements. For one, I recorded the whole of season 1 with my microphone facing the wrong way round. So now my microphone faces the right way. That should make things a bit better.
We've had a little bit of a glow up. We are definitely dipping our toe in the water. A few different avenues this season. We've already started doing video podcasting, having clips out like that, which has been interesting. It's been fun.
It has been interesting, and I should probably say in this episode was supposed to be a video episode, and we did the recording with our special guest, who we'll talk about in a little minute, but I forgot to record the video streams, so that didn't go very well.
And I wish you could see my face right now. Anyways, what song are we doing this week to kick off season 2?
Well, we are doing such a brilliant song. It is If You Could Read My Mind by Stars on 54.
Never thought I'd feel this way, and I've got to say that I just don't get it. I don't know where we went wrong, but the feeling's gone and I just can't get it back. If you could read my mind, if you could.
What are your immediate thoughts on this absolute disco banger?
Camp, and more camp. As camp as a row of 100 pink tents. It's absolute pop perfection. And I think it's the definition of how to take a song and completely change it for the better for a cover version.
Before we get into the song, well, normally we talk about who the artist is, but actually, this episode, we don't need to do that because we were able to catch up with Ultra Naté, so she can tell us all about the song and the artist herself.
Hello?
Well, it was a wonderful moment when I was really not paying attention, but I was on Strictly Rhythm, and God knows I was so super busy and swamped because Free and Found a Cure and, the whole Situation Critical album, I believe, was out by then. And my schedule was massive and crazy, and I was running around everywhere. And somewhere along the way, Tommy Boy was handling the soundtrack for Miramax for the film.
Yeah.
And it was a compilation of, classic disco and dance records that were part of the 54 era, part of that movement. And from what I got, they wanted to do one song that was a little bit more organic and original in that way, but still related to the story and context of Studio 54. So they had reached out to Strictly Rhythm, to my managers, to see if I would be interested in guesting as part of a group, a supergroup concept of myself, Amber, and Jocelyn Enriquez, who were also artists on Tommy Boy Records at the time, and they were having hits in their area. Amber with plenty of big dance hits. Jocelyn in the freestyle movement was doing her thing, to create this supergroup called Stars on 54 and do a cover remake version of If You Could Read My Mind by Gordon Lightfoot, which had been a hit in the 70s and then again in the 80s with Viola Wills. And so they wanted to reimagine the song one more time for this particular soundtrack. So I thought it was great. I'm like, okay, Studio 54, the movie, Brian Felipe, Salma Hayek, come on, like, come through. You don't have to do much to convince me. Like, where do I sign? So after all of the business was taken care of, because, my label had to sign off on allowing me to do something on Tommy Boy, it was mutually beneficial for everybody. And Tommy Boy hired the Berman Brothers to actually produce the track. So the Berman Brothers worked up the track that you now know and love. sent us the track for us to learn that version, how they reworked it. And then kind of working with everyone's crazy schedules because we were all on the road relentlessly at that point. Came up with one day where we all could get into New York at the same time and go in the studio. So we all met up in the studio. It was my first time meeting Berman Brothers. I had known Amber and Jocelyn for a very long time anyway, just the mutual dance diva thing, and everybody's out there touring and at these different kind of events, you get to know each other. And we got together, and each one of us went in the sound booth to basically sing the song from top to bottom, the way that the Berman Brothers wanted to get the production done. So all of us sang the whole song and ad libs and all the things. So they had a lot of material to work with at the end of the day.
Is there a lot of
And
alternative takes out there somewhere?
it's a lot, yeah. Like every part is sung by each one of us over and over again. And so they had a lot of material to work with. After the session, we left and went on our merry little way and didn't hear the final track until maybe a month or so later. And it's what we all know and love now. And it's how they cut and spliced it and turned it into this bright, shiny new nickel that we all loved. And suddenly, like, we were stars on 54. And then the craziest thing happened. They submitted it to Miramax, and Miramax loved the song. And like just a flurry of things started happening out of nowhere after that point. Like suddenly it was going to be the soundtrack of the movie now. So it's not just part of the compilation, but now it's actually in the movie as like the running theme throughout the movie.
It's like the song of the movie.
Yeah, it's like, the whole pinnacle of the movie. So I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's really beautiful. And then like, boom, next week, it's another development. They've decided to like redo the ending of the movie. And now it's going to have us actually performing as the closing scene in Studio 54. Steve Rubell has come back, and it's like one last night at 54 kind of, closing. And I'm like, oh, like suddenly we're in the movie. So it all came together, and it was a really beautiful time. And the song came out. It was a really big hit. It's still a huge classic. I still perform it all the time. Everywhere I go around the world, people still love it. It just brings really great vibes,
It's just such a good song. Like, as you say,
it
just
sounds amazing. Those Berman Brothers, man, they put their toes up in that. They rock that.
Well, thank you, Ultra. We will cut back to the rest of our fantastic interview with our special guest. She really was wonderful to talk to. We will cut back to that later on in the episode.
Yeah, she was fabulous, and you were so cool, and I just barged straight in and embarrassed both of us. So that's how this thing goes.
And that's why we're a team.
It was so amazing to hear about the backstory, though, of how the song was put together. And I didn't think I could appreciate this song anymore, but hearing about it and the way they recorded it, I then listened back to it and I just thought I can hear how these three incredible singers perform this song and then they put it together to make it flow the best it could. I just adore the song so much. Did you know the original before you heard this version?
I knew it was a cover version, and I know that it had been covered many times, but I wasn't aware or hadn't heard the original, which is obviously very stripped back, chilled by the fire, not the camp disco classic that we all know and love.
I didn't know the original. I remember when this came out, I was 12 years old, so I wouldn't have had any idea that this was a cover. And it blew my mind to listen to the original and then to listen to this version and to hear how different it was. But the hooks in it are still there. They're just done in a completely different way. I said it to Ultra. This is the song I think that probably turned me gay.
And she loved it. She loved that. The thing is, I think, like, to genuinely talk about the song and the structure, if you do strip it back to the original composition of that original as a song, it's such a beautifully constructed song lyrically, from the verse to the bridge to the chorus. And I just think some of the best disco songs are the ones that you can go either way. You can strip it back to its original form. To quote the wonderful Kylie Minogue, she said when she was recording one of her albums that the whole time they would try and strip it back to a basic acoustic version and saying, does this work as a song? I think the thing was, would Dolly sing this? If that makes sense.
Would Dolly sing this?
I'd love to hear Dolly Parton sing if you could read my mind. But that's not lost when it's put in this disco version. In fact, it's probably heightened more. The production is fantastic, and it's not really dated that much. It's both quintessential of its time, but also it's not out of place in comparison to pop songs of today, really.
I think it is the lyrics. You read the lyrics on paper and you think that's not going to work in a disco song, but they are. All three women perform it so well, and you hear their different qualities. I always thought, even at the time, before knowing how it was recorded, it was such a clever decision to have Ultra Naté's voice on it first, because she just had this massive hit with Free, and so straight away you recognise her voice. It's a really distinctive voice, but she doesn't dominate the song. Amber and Jocelyn Enriquez all get their own sections, and towards the end, all the ad-libs are just incredible. You get to hear all of these women do what they're so very good at, and that's what I love about it. And I suppose I feel like I have to say this at some point. All of them have performed it individually, and as you know, I'm a massive fan of the performance, which we will put a clip of on our socials, of Amber. You're laughing already. Of Amber performing the song solo. It's on YouTube, and while she's performing it, she does these incredible vocal runs, and someone in the audience just passes out. And she stood next to someone, and she just keels over. That would have been me.
That was you at the Backstreet Boys, wasn't it?
It was literally. I'd love them to get back together and do an anniversary performance of this. I'm not sure I'd still be on this earth at the end of it.
Just to give people context about it as well, these were three huge dance artists, and obviously Ultra, who we'll hear from later, had a massive iconic hit with Free, but Jocelyn also had a really big dance hit with a song called Do You Miss Me, and Amber had This Is the Night, which is a really iconic track, and I remember hearing it quite a lot on the radio. It was a really inspired decision to have all three come together as this super group. And as you say, they all get a moment to shine.
You know, sometimes you get high profile collaborations, it's just a one-off. If they even record it together, they record it, they might do the video and that's it. You don't get anything else from it. But they did a full promotional tour doing Top of the Pops. And yeah, they haven't done it recently, but there are performances where they did actually actively promote this single. And it's amazing to see, back in the late 90s as well, proper live diva performances on Top of the Pops.
Live vocals
Yeah.
on Top of the Pops as well, like unheard of during that period of time. To any of our younger listeners, if there's anyone, it obviously used to be standard that most people just mimed on Top of the Pops. I think there was a online clip for the anniversary.
Yeah, 25th anniversary.
A nod and a wink to the fans. I will also want to say about the song in terms of the way that it relates to the original. It's very much an adaptation, and it isn't exactly the same structure, which is something I really love about a cover version. I think there's a real art to doing a good cover version. I could probably do a whole episode and we could reel off a load of examples, but I don't want to just distract from this song because I feel like it takes the structure, just completely remixes it, and then makes its own version of it.
I think we need to talk about this music video.
Tell me what you see.
You go first, because we've both got notes.
Wow. It's so 90s. You watch it. How can I describe it? So I made some little notes. They start in this corridor that's lit up in white fluorescent lights. It's the one you recognise from most 90s videos. And they're on these little pedestal stages just performing the song. And then their clothes transform.
All I wrote was, where are they? Are they in space?
Yeah, it's just this random corridor in some universe, and then their clothes transform, and you've got like Jocelyn Enriquez swinging from a disco ball, and there's one point at which Ultra Naté is on a rotating platform, holding a disco ball, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so camp. But obviously you've got clips from the movie 54 cut into it. My absolute favourite bit of the video is when they're stood back on the platforms and their clothes transform again, and they're in these red outfits which were in the movie because they ended up being shot into the movie. But when they transform into these red clothes, they literally look down at the clothes and they're like, what on earth is this? And then it cuts to them performing in the movie. It's so good. They all get really into it. They do a little bit of character acting. It's just, it's absurd, but brilliant.
For me, the whole video feels like another 90s reference. It feels like a task on the Crystal Maze. It's like because they all have to do something to get into their specific disco room. There's a real through line to their part of the video. Like, it was pretty standard for a lot of videos if you're attached to a movie soundtrack to include clips of the movie. But what isn't standard is for the non-movie clips to still be a real video in itself. And they all have to essentially go into an individual room and leave the rest of the group. And it's like a task on a game show, but it's like disco-tesque. And I spent most of season 1 saying that the dance break was really unnecessary. But right here, I just think it's fantastic. They absolutely go to town for almost no reason, just in the chorus. And they're all doing the choreography. And it's like the choreography earns them a place in their own little disco heavens. And then eventually they all come together with that wonderful clip from the movie at the end.
Oh, it's
brilliant.
It's brilliant. And my closing thought is that I love it in videos. So obviously there are images from the movie sort of superimposed on the wall of this corridor, which obviously wouldn't have been there. They've been put in post-production, but they all sort of peer at them and they look and they point and they touch them like, oh, what is this? And I love that detail, the characterization. It's so 90s. This is why we do what we do, because of songs and videos like this.
Absolutely. Right, Craig, where did this chart?
Don't freak out until you know the facts. Relax, Max.
I mean, this is painful, really, because this is one of those songs that I thought is going to be massive. How can it not be massive? It got to number 23 in the UK, which that hurts now. It got to number 52 in America, which on the flip side, I'm like, I can't believe it got that high in America.
I was about to quote Lisa Scott Lee and go into a full, I won't swear. Everyone knows the B-list Capital reference.
Okay, cool. All right.
What is it?
Okay.
Just tell me what it is. Come on, Nate.
Right. 23.
Oh, that's really shit.
I'm disappointed.
That's really shit.
You know, we've had a very low airplay.
Yeah, but we're B-list at Capital.
Obviously, you said it got to that position in the States, but did it have much longevity or chart impact there at all?
It was weird. It charted for 14 weeks there, and it climbed up the Billboard Hot 100. The week it peaked at number 52, and then dropped out the week after, which is really unusual for America. But I think ultimately the issue was the movie 54. It was intended to be this quite gritty portrayal of Studio 54, and it was cut to shreds because it didn't test well with audiences. So what ended up being released was this movie that was half the original stuff, half reshot, all patchwork together. It just didn't work, and it was critically slated. So I think in some respects that hampered the song because it was attached to a movie that wasn't successful, that was critically slated. But you know what? It's lived on in my heart, and it's lived on in the legacy of every single person who was converted by this song.
I can't believe I hadn't mentioned it, but my final thought on the song is that I'd heard the song before, but my love of this song was because I used to work on cruise ships as a singer, and it was in one of our shows, but I wasn't in this show. By the look of the draw, there was some of the singers were in some shows, but not in others. It's just kind of how the model works on a lot of these cruise lines. And the show was called Stars on 45. And this was the finale. And I honestly kid you not, even though I never did the show, I could do it for you right now. And it is a shame this is not a video episode. I would perform it full choreography because I watched it so many
I
times.
see some bonus content coming up this season.
And it always went down an absolute storm. I just love it. It's just such an earworm. Like, even now, it's in my head. It like lives rent free there. What a fantastic
totally.
song. Well, shall we let people hear our wonderful interview with the wonderful Ultra Naté?
Absolutely. Listeners, I mostly embarrass myself in the company of this fabulous woman.
Hello, Ultra. Thank you so much for coming on the show with us.
Hi guys, how are you today?
I'm so overwhelmed.
Craig's been very excited.
I love
very
it.
excited.
I love it. That's the way we start the party.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
exactly.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, let's get started on some questions. We are doing If You Could Read My Mind as our song during this episode.
Fabulous.
So let's start with questions about the song, and then we'll go to some general questions after that.
Now, I read this on Wikipedia, so of course it must be true. But I read that there was a bit of a short but intense discussion about who was going to sing the first verse. Now, you all cut the whole song, but that can't be an untruth on Wikipedia, surely.
I've never seen that on Wikipedia, but that is definitely an untruth. No, we all sang the song from top to bottom. We had no idea how they were going to construct it. I don't think they even knew who was going to end up singing what in what was going to be the final draft. Like, they just wanted to get all of our vocals for all the parts and then chop it up and decide like what was going to be what. So no one had any idea until we actually heard the finished version.
We'll get on Wikipedia and correct that.
Yeah, good luck with that, because the trolls love to come back and redo it again. So I've had that happen.
I mean, the Wikipedia article is basically all the critical reception is all from my article that I wrote about it. So it's a fabulous Wikipedia page. When you do a cover version, you're like, I want to be respectful of the original, or is it just like the original's there, it's a great song, but we're just going to do something completely different with it?
Now, I got to say on this one, and I have a pretty huge catalog of music in my head, and especially with the 70s, singer-songwriter era of the 70s. But that one got by me. I did not know If You Could Read My Mind before we actually went to work on it. So I was learning it kind of organically. Yeah. And it was a huge hit in the 70s. Like, I don't know how I missed that.
I have to say, I think it's phenomenally written. You would listen to the Stars on 54 version and you would never think it came from the original. They both sound like they were made in that style. You wouldn't ever think it was a cover. I didn't.
It's true. It's true. I think both are amazing representations for the particular era. I mean, I love the folk version, that of the Gordon Lightfoot version. It's very folky. It's very melancholy. It's sad and it's full of love. And it really puts you in that place in the 70s. You can totally see him there with a guitar. Yeah. And, just delivering like this really beautiful, stripped down story. It's just the raw emotion of it. The version that we did for the movie, obviously, the time period that it's representing is during the 80s. So everything was big, glamorous, shiny, poppy disco balls, right? So we've got like all the sparkle, all the gayness, like it's all going down. So
gay? It's gay? What?
It's a gay old time,
No.
So, yeah.
So you mentioned this before. Also, thank you for, in your wonderful introduction about the song, answered multiple questions that we were going to ask you already, but that was beautiful. You all performed the song solo, as you mentioned, and it was the 25th anniversary last year. You did the little reunion video. Do you reckon there's ever a chance of, like some epic Billboards reunion performance or anything like that in the pipeline?
Well, I mean, we would all be down for it, obviously, but, we don't control that particular song. It's controlled by Tommy Boy. And I believe Tommy Boy has now sold the catalog to Reservoir, I want to say. Don't quote me on that. But there's some new owners in the mix. So anything is possible. I mean, they may decide to do something like that. Obviously, myself, Amber, and Jocelyn, we are still in communication through our socials. And Amber and I have done shows together. We've been on the same bill, and we've obviously done the song together in those opportunities through the years. And I think Jocelyn really just started performing again in the last few years.
Oh,
So
wow.
she's
Okay.
she's back out there and she's doing her thing in the freestyle world or in the dance world where she is. So we're here. We're here and we're all still cute. So let's do it.
I feel it.
We're
If this
all
doesn't
so
happen
cute.
before the end of 2024, if there is not a Stars on 54 reunion, it has to happen.
So I had just a general question with the
Mhm.
song in mind. I think this track is so quintessentially 90s, but as you also said, it is a throwback to 70s and 80s disco.
Mhm.
What influences you to cross over tracks and genres? Because you've done it on different things through your career, and even in your latest album, that I think's fabulous, by the way. I was listening to it. It's
Thank
brilliant.
you. Thank you. Thank you. I put a lot of love into that Ultra album and Ultra Deluxe. Thank you. I am just like, I'm all over the place when it comes to music because I think there are no rules. I live by this maverick style of approaching art. I think art is relative and there are no rules. And I'm always discovering like something new about what I do, how I do it. And those things can only happen by moving the needle, by challenging myself, by experimenting, by remaining curious. I think when you stop taking chances and being adventurous in that way, you kind of shoot yourself in the foot. It no longer becomes interesting for you or the audience. And this industry is always evolving and changing. And I think that's been a large part of the secret to my success and staying power, actually, is the fact that I am highly mutable. It's my nature, but it's also been my superpower in this industry that's always slipping in shifting sand. So you've got to be nimble. Got to be
Absolutely.
nimble. You better be quick, honey, because things are changing by the seconds, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's part of just my natural instinct and curiosity to try something different. I'm inspired by this. I like the way that hook feels. I like this lick. I want the hardcore beats. I'm from the underground. Like give me the red light in a beat and at 4 a.m. and I'm in it. But I also like it bright and shiny and poppy, or I also like it like really, really, really weird and left of center. So I'm like kind of all over the place. And I learned very early on to celebrate that and lean into it instead of trying to like box myself into something really specific.
That's
Amazing.
fabulous. So, just to round off that, if you could read my mind, you mentioned a superpower, but if you could read anyone's mind, who would it be and why? This is hard hitting journalism right
No,
here.
yeah.
You really went there. But I'm going to go with my knee jerk reaction, what I said in my head instead of what I was going to say politically correct. Just because it's that kind of day, okay?
Good. Do it.
So I would have said probably my ex-boyfriend.
Oh, okay.
Right. Only because it was not a great breakup. It was definitely a breakup that needed to happen, but it was not a great way that we split. And I think I would just probably like to know that he's okay. He's
I
okay.
love that. I love that. It's a really profound answer to a really daft question. I love
I
that.
was expecting like Mother Teresa or like just like something silly. Oh,
I mean, for me, breakups are really hard and weird. Like, no matter
yeah.
how much it's needed, if the relationship is not working, incompatibility, like all the things, check all the boxes, blah, 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 blah. The who did what, whatever. Like, but at the end of the day, like, I don't really like choose to harbor ill will because I think it just makes you old and ugly. So I would kind of probably like to know that he's okay. Like he's having a positive experience with his life. Because at the end of the day, he's a good person. I just think for us as a couple, it didn't bring out the best in him. So there were things that like
I
need
love
to be dealt with in that area for him. But I think there's a good person somewhere in all of that. And so I would hope that person starts to become more fully realized in his life. But I'm not
Wow.
going to ask him because, I'm not opening up that can of worms.
No one needs that.
So,
Wow,
yeah.
thank you. So this leads on from something you mentioned just before. You talked about how the music industry has changed a lot. But what are your thoughts on that? Because you obviously started in the early 90s and the music industry was so different there. Not just about genres and styles, but you're talking about how things get promoted and songs come out of nowhere and social media. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
It's a stark raving mess.
Yeah.
It's a hot mess. It's a mess. But you know, the industry has always been a mess. It's just been messy in different ways. The secret is learning how to navigate the new terrain. You know, I've always felt like the music business is like the Wild Wild West. And if you know how to move in spaces that are not fixed, nothing is fixed, nothing is guaranteed. There's always something changing and evolving. And if you're able to approach that and still, you know, maintain your sanity, then you're winning.
Yeah.
You also have to be very courageous. This industry is really about courage, especially as a woman of color and a woman of color that's well beyond 25.
Look, a day over 24, darling.
I'll take it. I'll take it. But there is that Wikipedia, Craig. We need to talk about.
Let's get editing on that straight away.
Yeah. So yeah, it requires a lot of courage to still stay the course and still feel inspired and still take the wins and the losses that happen and navigate all of that and still feel like you have something to say and you're still relevant to the community the way that it's moving and shifting. You know, the dance music genre itself has splintered out into so many different things and so many different subgenres and so many different labels, and the technology has enabled everyone to make records and everyone to be a DJ and everyone to be everything and all things. And consumers are, you know, are out there obliterated with all of this every day. It's like, how do you separate what's good, what's not, what's, you know, what's hot, what's not? Like everything is kind of feeling like it's very throwaway, and things that are substantive, like, are they getting a fair shot, you know, in the marketplace? Because there's just so much noise. It's just it's a lot of noise. So if you can figure out how to navigate that in some kind of way and know how to stay centered and grounded in the middle of a tornado, that's what life is like in the music business right now, especially as an independent artist.
I think that was a bit of a mic drop moment there. That was fantastic. Wow. Your song Free is an absolute LGBTQ plus anthem. I don't think I've been to a single Pride festival in my life, and I've been to many in which that I've not heard it at
And
least.
it better not happen, because if they're not playing Free, something is wrong with that Pride festival.
Wrong with that festival. Like, I'm like, where am I?
They are not doing it right.
How does it feel as an artist, and with that song in particular, have such an iconic place for LGBTQ people?
Well, I mean, you know, when we wrote Free, there was a lot going on career-wise. There was a lot of transition, a lot of changes happening for me personally. But there was also like this overarching message that we wanted to get out, because, you know, I always feel like my struggles are like a microcosm of what the rest of the world is going through. So if I'm feeling, you know, turbulent in my mind and my spirit, then I know that people are feeling that times 10 out there. And my job is to, how do I channel my own sense of fear or curiosity or happiness or joy or anger or disappointment? Like, how do I channel that in a way that is going to speak to other people, make them feel seen and heard? And so that's the way we approached what Free needed to be as a song, context wise. And then musically, like what was going to be resonating, the guitars and the angst that we made in the guitars, along with the bittersweet story, and then the backbeat, just like driving, and like all of these amazing elements come together to like create this perfect storm, this story. And then you put it out there in the world. You have no idea if anybody's even going to like it. You know, all you can hope for is that like somebody likes it. So for me, it's like the biggest joy and surprise that when it was released out there to the world, being such a different kind of animal than what was happening in dance music, that it was embraced so heavily, especially amongst the LGBTQIA plus community, and then has taken on a life of its own to become the mantra of joy and freedom around the world. And for so many people's lives, like that's the real win right there. You know what I mean? So it's beyond me. I'm just the vessel to like bring this story to life, but it really does take on a life of its own once it's out there to the world. And, you know, it's any man's guess. Like you have no idea.
As I say, every single Pride festival I've ever been to, it gets played. It always goes down a storm. And I love what you just said as well, the fact that the guitars as a riff throughout it is so different to other things you say happen in the time. I was
And
gonna
people
actually,
said people wouldn't respond to guitars. We were actually told when we were, constructing it. It was like, people in dance music, they respond to drums. They're not gonna respond to guitars. Like that's too rock and roll. That's not gonna feel organic house or whatever. And, per usual, I was just like, this is what I want to do.
Let's do it anyway.
What I'm doing. We'll see what happens. But it was a real risk. It was a huge, huge risk. But I think people feel that. I think people feel like that level of authenticity, like this was never meant to sound or feel like anything else in that moment. Loved it or hated it. It was never meant to be, overshadowed by anything else. It was never meant to sound like, oh, this is the latest hit record in the charts. Let's make a record like this. It was never meant to be that.
I did a little bit of looking around on Instagram, and you have a club night called Deep Sugar in Baltimore. I love a free cocktail, and I notice on the flyer that you get a free cocktail when you go in. What's your favorite cocktail?
Oh, for me personally, so I don't like my cocktails super sweet. I'm a tequila drinker.
oh,
So yeah, I'm good with tequila or actually gin. And people are always like, oh my God, you drink gin. Like, what the hell? So like it's going to put hair on your chest, but it doesn't bother me at all in that way. So, but I'm a tequila person. So I really like, tequila with a little soda water and maybe just a little spritz of something like an elderflower liqueur or something to just give it a tiny little pinch of sweetness.
wow.
Oh, I love
That's
that.
like the ultra cocktail there.
Yeah, because
great.
I'm also counting calories in my head also. So
When I come by Deep Sugar, mine's a Cosmopolitan, by the way. It's just so you know.
That's a girly drink, I want you to know.
I don't care. I grew up watching Sex and the City. That's the only
Oh
reason I
my
still
God.
drink it.
Oh my God, I did used to drink Cosmos way back in the day. That feels so 80s though.
I think I go for I do quite a lot of work on cruise ships as a singer. And if I'm ever working there, I always get a Mai Tai. I
don't think I've ever had one.
It's like rum but
That's why.
it's quite sweet. It is quite sweet.
It's
but
the rum and the sweetness, yep.
Anyway,
we weren't
That'll put
here
those
to
cacao
talk
on
about
you
drinks.
guys. That'll put those cacao on you. That'll show up in your waistline. Just saying.
But we're going to dance them off at your club night. So
Okay.
I don't go clubbing very much. So if I was going to go to your club night and you're there DJing,
Yep.
what can I expect? What are you going to play? What are you going to do to get me dancing?
Well, let's see. You're gonna hear a lot of like 4 to the floor because I'm very about the 4 to the floor. So it's going, we got the gospel stomp in Baltimore, so there's going to be a lot of like bang shangalang and beats, but there's also going to be a lot of vocals because we love to sing, and the dance floor is always lit up with melody. So it's going to be this careful balance between like some old school classic stuff that Hands in the Air, The Boss, Diana Ross or something like that, with, something like Jesus Creates Sound by Marlon D with beats that's like banging in your head. So we've got that really weird place in Baltimore where we love to sing, but we also love to go like 4 a.m., 6 a.m., 9 a.m. in the morning when all of the like touristy people, the early people are gone, and it's really just down to the dirty dancing and you're ready to do it. Like it's that kind of like energy. But everybody's in the soup together. So it's going to be multicultural, multiracial. It's going to be super diverse. Everybody and everything are going to be in the soup together. And that's really like celebrated at my party. Like that's what we push, and that's what's celebrated. So you kind of get lost in the whole thing, and you're going to let go of all of your inhibitions. You're going to let go of all of your stress from the week, and you're going to lose yourself in the music.
You may be holding my hair back as I'm throwing up in the toilet because I don't go out very often. Sorry.
I do. I'm going out clubbing tomorrow, so
Those Cosmos girls.
he's at home with his Cosmo, and I'm out. I'm coming to your dance floor, Ultra. I'm there.
I want to see you on my dance floor.
I will be.
All right.
So you mentioned it before, but your latest album, Ultra and Ultra Deluxe, it's absolutely fantastic. It's such a great combination of styles, but still rooted in 90s dance culture.
I released an album called Grime, Silk, and Thunder back in, I think it came out in maybe 2005, 2006, somewhere around there. In partnership with Tommy Boy. So now you got to go back and do back catalog checking and listen to those albums. So you got Grime, Silk, and Thunder. I did an album called Hero Worship. The one that always gets lost on Spotify because it's under Black Stereo Faith is that album with Quentin Harris. We did an album with Black Stereo Faith as well.
How was this album for you to work on and to release?
It was very cathartic because it was written during the pandemic lockdown. And it really was what kept me sane every day was, getting up and having to work on music and having a consistent project and focus every day. It was really an anchor in a lot of ways to keep me grounded when the world seemed to be spiraling out. The apocalypse was going on out there, but in here, like, I'm working on this song called Fun. It's a very not fun moment. So I'm channeling like what I need to be happening. I'm channeling it. Like, and again, it's like the microcosm, macrocosm thing. Like, I know that I was going through like this terrible anxiety and depression, like everybody else in the world. And I'm losing friends left, right, and center around the world. And the level of grief that I was dealing with was phenomenal. And so I needed to put that somewhere. And I needed something to center me and focus me. Again, in the eye of the storm, I needed something to ground me. And the Ultra album was exactly that. It was absolutely what I needed in that time. And I knew if I needed it so badly, then the world needed it as well. They needed music from people that they know and love. They needed to hear voices that they connect with. They needed stories. They needed someone to see them and feel and voice what they're feeling in that moment. And so that was my inspiration through the whole thing, was like healing myself by reaching out to others and focusing on what I wanted to put out there to others to be an anchor for them.
I love songs like Fun and The Garden. I was thinking, there's some challenges in the world and there's this solace in music. And obviously the pandemic is sort of over now, but do you think that is still there? Do you think that uncertainty is still there and people need that solace?
It's totally resonating. I mean, the pandemic in terms of the amount of people dying from the virus has gone down, but there is still the aftermath of the uncertainty. There's just this, and there's been this energy in the world of just tension and angst. It's like people are just angry or just out of pocket. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's like there's something still resonating with people after that. I think there's post-traumatic syndrome going on. There's definitely some PTSD kind of energy out in the world. I think people have been less patient with each other. I think people have been less open. It's caused people to become just kind of introverted and protective of their space and just less tolerant of people that they don't know and situations and things. There's just less of that. And I think we all have to counter that by putting more light out there. It was an intention of being a light because there's so much darkness and angst going on, and we have to counter that in some kind of way and kind of anchor each other, like, okay, I got your back over here. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the way that I approached it when I was writing songs like Fun and Garden. And like, we all knew how bad it was. And we have to speak about that because that's part of how we heal. That's why it was so cathartic for me. But at the end of the day, I don't want it to all be the doom and the gloom and the heaviness and the darkness. Like, we have to find the light in that.
And there's loads of songs on there that aren't doom and gloom. They're absolute upbeat anthems. I've personally added Laser and Unbreakable to my gym playlist.
Oh,
so you'll be in my ears when I'm.
Laser is a good kind of like gym song, right?
Yeah, it's really good.
I agree.
And I love your hat on the cover. I think it's fabulous.
Thank you. That is a very good friend of mine, one of my besties for like 30 plus years. He does couture hats in the church community as well, in the church industry for years. And when I was shooting for the cover, I was just like, bring one of your hats. Like, I just want something that has like a really
just something subtle,
just really strong, like odd shape that just has like just has a very like iconic look to it. So we had no idea like what that would be, what he had in his archives. He had no idea what I would like. I was like, I don't want any bells and whistles on it because his look is to like bling everything up and to upstream it in some kind of way, like take an organic shape and then just like turn it up. And I was like, nope, Don't want any bells and whistles on it. It just needs to organically have like an amazing shape on its own. And so he came with all these things, and then he pulled his hat out, and he was really kind of shy about it. Like, I never get this, but I've got this hat. And we were just like, myself and Carl Giant, my photographer, were like, that's it. Oh my God. That's it. It's everything. We love it. We just loved it so much. Like, it's so iconic, and it just, it has its own zip code. It's so big. It's like, it's doing its thing. So
It's getting
people
mail.
loved it. Yeah, it's got its own area code, zip code, the whole nine. But people loved it, and that it did exactly what I wanted it to do for the cover, and just be like this iconic piece that really stamps the deluxe version of the album.
I love it.
Love that.
Thank you.
Well, Ultra, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I'm glad we could chat today.
Honestly, been such a pleasure, and thank you for being so relaxed and fun with us. We throw some random questions out there.
I loved
appreciate
your questions. I loved it. Call me anytime. It's good.
Please hang up. This is a recording.
Well, wasn't she amazing?
Oh, she was. I was really nervous before we interviewed her. She was wonderful. She is incredible. I have so much love for her.
I've just got a lot of respect for her. I think the fact that she's obviously had so much success for such a long period of time, and you interview someone who obviously, like, the peak of her chart success was a fair amount of time ago, but she's continued to release new music. But I genuinely loved her new album. Give her latest album a listen, everybody. It's just absolute pop damped bangers. And I just love that she's doing her thing, and she's got her club nights, and she was just so lovely and warm and welcoming. And I do wish that we'd been able to video it, because she looked absolutely fabulous. We could only dream of looking that fabulous.
She was so fabulous. I mean, what we can do is go to her club night. I think we should try and raise some funds and go to her club night.
GoFundMe page to take Can't Stop the Pop to Ultra Naté's club night.
So I can have my free cocktail.
My favourite thing was the fact that you obviously don't like clubbing, but I do, and having an argument about, well, I'll come. And you were like, no, I'll just go for the cocktail. I'll just be there in the corner.
Yeah.
She kind of rolled her eyes at that. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning back in for season 2. We're very excited to get stuck in this season. If you want to listen to If You Could Read My Mind by Stars on 54, you can find it on all streaming platforms. There's a plethora of remixes too. So, Craig, where can they find us?
Before I mention where they can find us, I just have to point out in particular, please go and listen to the 25th anniversary edition of If You Could Read My Mind. Listen to the Hex Hector epic piano mix, because you will ascend.
There's nothing like a Hex Hector remix.
We love, and we know that some of our listeners and readers love a Hex Hector remix. We've been told. You can... Can't Stop the Pop has a website where there are over 400 reviews, including If You Could Read My Mind, which you can find at www.can'tstopthepop.com. We're also on social media. I am at Can't Stop Pop on X and Can't Stop _ the Pop on Instagram. We also now have a TikTok, Can't Stop the Pop Podcast.
And I am at Matkins Actor on X and Matt_Atkins9 on Instagram.
And we've also got YouTube now. So we are at Can't Stop the Pop on YouTube. All of season 1 is on there, but without video. But there is a season 1 retrospective that we did film with a video. So if these episodes aren't long enough for you and you want a whole hour of Can't Stop the Pop, you can check that out on YouTube now.
That was really fun to do as well. It was a long episode, but it was a good old time. So do get in touch. Let us know what you think of the song. We've also recently added on streaming and on Spotify the ability for you to be able to add a comment and answer a couple of questions. So please go ahead to the episodes and answer some of the questions that we've got. Leave us a review, only a good one, wherever you get your podcast from.
Thank you so much for listening. Welcome back to season 2 and join us next time for more
Can't stop the pop.